Welcome to Media and Monuments, presented by Women in Film and Video in Washington, D.C. Media and Monuments features conversations with industry professionals speaking on a range of topics of interest to screen-based media makers.
Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Candice Bloch, and today I'm joined by Julia Lindon, an LA-based comedy writer who has recently written on In the Know, Peacock's new stop-motion NPR parody, and Netflix's survival of the Thickest. She's served as the writer's assistant on season 3 of Apple's Ted Lasso and created Lady Liberty, a TV pilot that premiered at Tribeca Film Festival. Welcome to the show, Julia.
Thanks so much for having me, Candice.
So I guess just jumping right in, because we're going to talk a lot about, writing and TV comedy writing, and everyone's story is different. But how did you get into writing? Like, how did you break into this business?
Yeah, well, it started kind of with a general love of comedy. And I fell in love with comedy in college when I joined one of those famed improv comedy groups. And that just kind of gave me the bug. And it was once I actually moved to New York City after college and started taking classes at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater. That's both in LA and New York. But I was in New York and was taking sketch writing classes and improv and doing stand up, and just kind of got a sense of what I wanted to do, which was write comedy in any shape or form. Mm-hmm. So I was working at NBC as a page. So very similar to Kenneth the Page. From 30 Rock, and was working at SNL and seeing how those sketches came together and getting a taste of the late night world there. But then ultimately, moved out to LA, and that's where I got my start in scripted comedy rooms the past few years.
That's really cool. I know a lot of people, myself included, listening are jealous of that experience because it's so cool to be a part of that and to see it. So I feel like nearly every successful comedy writer has a background in improv, yourself included. Why do you think improv is so important for incubating comedic thought?
Yeah, I mean, there's something so collaborative about it, and that's what drew me to it. It's one thing when you're, a kid playing alone or with a couple friends, but who think you're the funny one or something. But when you join a group of people where you're all really invested in building something together and making each other laugh, and then ultimately performing for an audience, I think it helps everyone play at the top of their intelligence. Mm-hmm. And it then becomes really similar to what you're actually doing in a professional writer's room, where you're all just trying to build something together and pitch ideas and say yes to it and build and find whatever the best thing is.
So you talked about how you got a little bit into that and near these writers' rooms and all of that. So was there an initial first big job or milestone or something where you realized you could make a living as a writer and that this was going to be your path?
I think I kind of took a big risk a few years back, and I had a script that I had written that I put a lot of effort and time in and funds to actually get made. And that's this project, Lady Liberty. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of went all in on that, and it got some really nice traction at the film festivals, and we premiered it at Tribeca Film Festival. And that kind of made me feel, okay, maybe maybe I can do this. Maybe if I was able to pop on this circuit, maybe I could, if I just keep hustling, find ways to do it again in other shape and forms.
Speaking of Lady Liberty, you premiered it as a TV pilot, but it's only been just that pilot so far, correct? There's not any additional episodes or anything. So the choice to call it a TV pilot and the fact that you do mostly episodic TV, is that something do you prefer episodic stories over films, for example? Do you like that sort of more open runway to keep a narrative going? Or
I think I do. And I think it's exciting to me in terms of just building something that could, because a TV show, means that you could end up putting an entire room of writers together who have all different experiences. It means that it could go on for seasons. It means that, an audience could grow over time. And there's something that I just love about that world. So I was interested in positioning it as a pilot that could grow and expand in different directions versus just a short film that lived only kind of in that time and place.
And in that, you wrote it, but you also star in it. Is acting something you want to do more of, or is it just something you kind of did to service the piece to get it made, and you stay more behind the scenes, or where do you see potentially acting again in your future?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely something that I knew I wanted to do for that piece, and had been performing with improv and everything before that. But since Lady Liberty, I've been a lot more focused on writing and feeling more comfortable behind the scenes. I do love like hosting and kind of just playing a version of myself.
Hmm.
So that is something that I'd love to do more. But I think the going so deep into a role that I feel very far away from is not what I'm searching for.
Yeah, so you tried it, you like writing better, and yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. And speaking of writing, how would you describe like your writing method or process? Do you keep, because you do comedy, do you keep a
Mhm.
notebook around to write down funny things, or how does that look?
Oh yeah, for sure. I feel like I have probably since high school I've been keeping notebooks, so I've got all my old ones still with me that I carry around uh, in my house. But yeah, just whatever inspiration strikes, or if I get excited about a little thing that feels like it could be a whole idea, like a whole movie or book or show, just trying to immediately carve out some time to brainstorm it and maybe write an
Hmm.
outline or other thoughts that come off of it. So I'm just constantly looking to be inspired, and yeah, and going back even through old notebooks and what was funny to me 10 years ago and what perspective do I have now that I can comment on it.
So what is the visual element of making writing for screen-based media? How does that kind of enhance the process to you, or change how you write versus example if it was just like a funny essay or something?
Oh yeah, for sure. So the show that I worked on most recently features stop motion puppets. So that was something where it was just so fun to always be thinking of what would this actually look like, and
Hmm.
animators are going to have to move this puppet in a certain way. So thinking of really funny physical choices that could happen, and that you're writing into the dialogue, or sorry, into the stage directions that just make the scene come to life. So it was really fun to do with animation. And then in the past, like I was working on Ted Lasso this final season, and that's a show that people just love the character so much, and I
Hmm.
do too. So I think that's really fun when you get to envision the actors
Right.
and the way that they're going to bring what is specific to them to it. So
Hmm.
I like doing it both in live action and in animation.
Yeah. So in animation, do you find you have more freedom because you're not constrained in any way by like physics or budget for certain setups, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really different, the like 2D animation versus actually having to, how do we make this happen with the puppets? There was something even as simple as a character whose hair had always been short
Hmm.
the entire season. We had this idea that she was really letting loose and all her hair is gonna like come out at once, even though we didn't know she had all this hair, which is such a fun, simple idea. But
Hmm.
then it was like, oh, we have within stop motion animation, there's like an entire department of costumes and hair and face. So
Hmm.
trying to figure those things out actually aren't as like immediately simple as possible, but are
Hmm.
definitely really gratifying because um it's there's so much like
Yeah,
love and attention.
and stop motion is different than regular digital. I mean, I used to dabble a little bit in stop motion when I was young because I'm a visual artist as well.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah, it's definitely a constraint. And I have so much respect for the artists who create it, because you can tell when it's, digital versus like actually handmade, and it's, I don't know, I think it enhances the quality.
Oh, absolutely.
So yeah, you also talked about coming into Ted Lasso in season 3. What is it like to join a writer's room after like that sort of group has been creating a story for a couple seasons beforehand, and you're coming in like at the end? Was that welcoming or weird, or what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it was really fun, unique experience. I think there had been this bond of the group that had, they were the first season, they had no idea what show they were working with, and then by the time that I came into season 3, it was like a national global phenomenon.
Yeah.
So that was just really exciting. I felt really honored and lucky to kind of see how it was all working. Something cool with that show was I got my start like right after SNL, I worked for Jason Sudeikis for a few years in New York, and he was actually developing Ted Lasso in like the very early
Mm.
stages back then. So it was fun because it was something where I got to know a lot of those people before the show was, even picked up
Wow.
by Apple or anything like that. So I loved that experience of seeing the seeds of it and then returning to it when it was already,
Yeah.
blooming, and then getting to
That's
have
so
a
cool.
small part of that final season
How
and contribute a
fortunate.
bit to all that.
That's
Yeah,
like you
no, I
got
feel
to
really
know the
lucky.
it's like you got to know them in college before they got famous or something. Like you got to know
Sure.
them a little bit before.
That's funny.
Um
Yeah.
but yeah, so for our listeners who don't really know what a writer's room is like, I mean, can you break it down? Because on Ted Lasso, you were a writer's assistant.
Hmm.
Can you explain the different positions and roles, like
For
assistant
sure.
versus like a head writer or whatever, and what
Yeah,
is that like?
so the show is run by a showrunner or a team of showrunners, and they are the ones who are, really the head honcho, and they're dealing with the network and the studio. But they're also ideally the one who's in the writers' room every day, kind of setting the agenda of what we're going to be working on and making the big choices of like what direction the story is going to be going in. And then you've got, around a big table, the you know the team of writers, and that can be anywhere from maybe like 5 people to 12 people. It really varies, and they've all worked on other shows and have, technically different titles, but at the table everyone is pitching and
Hmm.
contributing, and in similar ways. And then you have the support staff, and it can, look pretty different on different shows. But on a show that kind of has all those positions there, you've got a script coordinator, a writer's assistant, and a writer's PA, like production assistant. And the writer's PA is doing a lot of the things we think of like, um, for PAs. So they are stocking the kitchen with
Yeah.
snacks, making sure the lunches get there, all of that. And
Maintaining the
then
writers, yeah.
maintaining the writers,
Yeah.
exactly, keeping the room clean, all that. And then, works different on different shows, but the writer's assistant and script coordinator often work together, and that was the case on my experience on Lasso. I was able to learn a ton from our script coordinator because she had also been a writer's
Hmm.
assistant years before. And the idea is that we kind of work together to make sure that we're getting all the important notes down of
Hmm.
everything that's pitched in the room, all the possibilities. If there's a really funny joke pitched, making sure that we get it down word for word. So, we can kind of
Hmm.
just give that to the writers when they go off on script and have them put that in there. And ideally, it makes everyone laugh on set the way that it made all the writers laugh in the room. So we're kind of just the scribes of all that is said, while also not just being like, taking down everything like we're in a
Hmm.
courtroom, but
Right.
trying to synthesize it in our heads of, okay, this goes on theme with this, or organized note. Oh, now we're talking about this character and this possibility. So it's a really fun job, and it's a
That's
way
cool.
that I really learned how to listen in the room about
Hmm.
what was important and what idea, we were sticking with, and then what we were dropping, and picking up
Hmm.
just different threads and story arcs and character. So it's a really great learning job, because then, um, a lot of times after being a writer's assistant, people will be the script coordinator, and you're the one who's proofreading the scripts as they get sent out to the network, and to the studios. And yeah, at some shows it's really separate, like what those two positions do. Sometimes they work
Hmm.
together. But yeah, this, and I've been on shows as well where I've been the writer's assistant and there hasn't been a script coordinator, so I'm the one who's proofing and sending stuff
Hmm.
out. Those have been, yeah, really great learning experiences. And then I've since then, got bumped up to be writing on the animated show. And that was a similar experience where I started as the writer's assistant and was
Hmm.
able to, you know, be in the room and then also be pitching ideas and contributing. And after, enough time of doing that, my bosses were very, very sweet, and, told me they wanted to credit me as a writer on that. And so that's just been a really nice evolution of getting to work on shows and, forming relationships with the people and
Hmm.
telling them what I'm interested in. And then, yeah, and hoping that an opportunity to move up arises. So it's been cool.
Yeah, it seems like that's a common thread in this industry. Just, you find the people you work well with and click with and you prove yourself on projects. And so is that how you would get from one project to another project? Just like kind of referrals and word of mouth, or is there something that you would like try out, like audition for or submit things for, or how do you get
Different
the
things.
mentors?
Yeah, I've got a manager, and so that company has been super helpful. Where they represent a lot of comedians. So, um, the Ted Lasso job came from my relationship that I had with Jason back in New York. But the other shows I worked on were high up people on that show who had created the show were also at the management company. So that was really helpful to me to feel like I could enter a space and then be a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
like thought of for opportunities just by being a part of that company.
That's cool. Have you, because we have to ask, have you noticed any major differences pre or post strike in terms of writer rooms, in terms of like the size of them or the business of it all?
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on and no one really knows exactly what it is other than everyone's got like a little bit of a things seem weird, right? Yeah, they do seem weird. So I have no, wise perspective on it other than I think things are still weird, and people were really hoping that post-strike, problems would be solved that existed before. But in some ways, 2024, we've got a whole new set of, the company, everything just contracting, and there
Okay.
being less opportunities, kind of at all levels.
Mm.
So it's been strange, and I don't think people know what exactly is next.
That sounds frustrating. It's like not weird in a good way, and but hopefully things will figure it out, like it'll settle
Yes,
into something that is good and works
yeah,
for
and I
more
think that it's the
people.
kind of industry that is always changing, and we're just in one of those moments right now.
Yeah, it's a time of flux and, expanding to incorporate more things and take
For sure.
care of and account for more people. Speaking of kind of a weird transition of inclusivity, on Survival of the Thickest, how is it when you're writing for a show where like the main characters, where you don't necessarily have a lot of the same lived experiences of them? Like for example, for people that don't know the show, it's like a larger bodied woman of color that's like the main character.
Hmm.
You are not those things. So how do you respect that and keep that into consideration when that's kind of like a theme of a story?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think what's so great about that show is Michelle Buteau created it along with Danielle Sanchez Witzel, and the two of them just had a really clear vision of trying to make the show about that, but also about the theme of inclusivity in general. So we had other characters and storylines that were about those things, and kind of a celebration of queerness and a bunch of things in there. And ultimately, I felt like Michelle was in the room with us all the time. So a part of the job as a writer is to just really understand who you're writing for and what the show is about and who is your main character. And so she just showed us herself, from every angle. And it was so wonderful and funny and great that immediately you're like, oh my God, I love this character. And, how do I absorb as much of her to, put it into these scripts and into the pitches and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, it all ended up feeling pretty natural, but, having a really good mix in the writer's room of people who have a similar background and different backgrounds so that we
Mm-hmm.
can create a show that's an ensemble that has this larger theme of
Yeah.
inclusivity, but with characters who are, from different backgrounds and shapes and sizes.
Yeah, that was great. I mean, I've seen the show. It's refreshingly like super inclusive. It's
Yeah.
very open and loving. I love it. I actually also really liked that the main character. I don't want to give anything away, but she like her best friend is like she's straight and her best friend is a guy who's straight, and there's
Yeah.
nothing weird about that, and they're just best friends. And I love that because I have a lot of really good close male friends, and everyone's always like, how's it like people think it has to cross lines sometimes. I'm like, it doesn't. And I love seeing that represented, that it's a
Yeah.
thing
No, it's really
that you
nice.
don't
And
see
we
very often. Yeah.
talked a lot about that. The idea of their relationship was they went way back and they were just really
Hmm.
supportive of each other. And they talked about relationships, talked about work and family
Hmm.
and all the things. And yeah, I think that Tone Bell, who plays the character of Khalil, is so charming and sweet and
Hmm.
funny. So I think
Yeah.
that relationship was really nice. I agree.
Keeping things comedic, since you do comedy writing instead of just general writing, you're in that specific niche. How do you continue to hone your comedic voice? You said maybe that you do stand up. Is that correct? Do you continue to do
Yeah,
that?
that was stuff that I was, performing was more when I was in New York. And here it's like I'm constantly going. I find myself going to shows, as much as I can. And I'm still kind of new to LA. I've just been here a couple of years, but discovering the different comedy theaters here and, following comics that I've followed for years and then discovering new comics has just been very fun. And yeah, collaborating with different comics and working in different mediums, whether it's like writing a feature or a children's book. Like I'm a little bit all over the place,
It's
but
nice
it's
to
always
spread
just
it
been
around. Yeah.
exactly. But yeah, just continuing to like be out there and talk with people and you know figure out what I think is funny has been really an enjoyable
That's cool.
experience.
Do you ever continue, or maybe initially, did you do any like workshops or classes or read books or anything that might be good to recommend for people that might want to get
Yeah,
into
of
writing or
course.
comedy writing?
Yeah, so I mean, the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater was a great spot for me. It's both in New York and LA, and I think their sketch writing classes are so great because you almost get, you're not expected to walk out of there with 30 pages of a script, but maybe a couple funny 5-page scripts, and you get the chance to actually have your scripts read out loud at the table and critiqued and critique
Mm-hmm.
others. And so you almost get this really nice writer's room environment where you get to practice pitching and taking notes and drafting and all that. So I think their classes are great.
Getting back to improv, like do improv, people. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I
good for
love it.
other things in life too, beyond writing.
Yeah, a lot of public speaking and
mhm.
just being in the moment. And I always found it to be, well, both very just like whatever was on my mind that was stressing me out, it was just the best stress reliever. And all of a
Mhm.
sudden you're in a silly world with silly people and not thinking about the thing that you've
Mhm.
been, pissed off about all day.
It seems like any form of like the arts, be it like, immersing yourself in comedy or painting or whatever, just like getting out of your head and into something is very
Totally.
therapeutic. Yeah. So yeah, do you have any kind of on that tone of advice? Do you have any advice that you wish you had gotten when you started out, or any words of encouragement for anyone wanting to break into writing?
Yeah. I mean, I think the advice that I got and maybe didn't listen to and all that stuff, but it's just like, there was some stuff I really loved that the comedy writer told me about taste and how like your taste always evolves but like you can't judge where you're at now, so like write the best thing you can write now, and if in 10 years you read it and you're like holy crap that's embarrassing, it's okay, and it's what got you to the thing that allows you to now think that's embarrassing.
Yeah.
um,
It shows
and
evolution and growth. Yeah.
exactly, instead of just stopping at this is all I can, oh I shouldn't do this because I'm not good enough or whatever. It's like you get better, and if you love the thing, like let the passion could take you. And then I think the other thing that I continue to have to remind myself is like it's a really weird industry, it's a really weird world, and so I think every industry is weird,
Yeah.
but Hollywood specifically is just more and more feels like this frustrating gamble that you're always like waiting to pay off. But yeah, there's a lot of, if you do it long enough and create connections with people all over the board, there's going to be all types of opportunities that are going to like allow you to express yourself and grow and get paid and all of that. So just kind of, if you're in it, keep holding on and keep staying on the ride.
Yeah. Hang in there, people. Yeah. No, that's great. Before we wrap things up, was there anything you wanted to talk about any like exciting projects you have coming up, or
Yeah, I think
just reminding us of where to check out
for
your
sure,
stuff?
for sure. I'll definitely plug this animated show that just came out a couple weeks ago on Peacock. I think it's really, really smart and funny and weird and great. Yeah, I'm hoping that more people discover it. I think especially in like the DC area,
Hmm.
it centers on the world of NPR. So I think it's big in
Yeah.
big in
Lot of
DC and
NPR listeners around these parts. Yeah.
exactly. But it's a really fun, silly show, and then it incorporates a lot of celebrity interviews as well. So that kind of has people excited about it too. But yeah, so check out In the Know on Peacock. There's 6 episodes, and they're all streaming now. And then yeah, rewatch Survival of the Thickest if you haven't checked it out on Netflix. And there's going to be a season 2 of that, so that's super exciting.
Excellent.
And then enjoy a binge of Ted Lasso. And yeah, I'm just on Instagram, so if anyone ever wants to reach out or has questions, I'm just at Julia Lindon.
Awesome. Yeah, so it's exciting to hear that there's going to be a season 2 of Survival of the Thickest, and I also recommend watching Ted Lasso even again if you haven't. I just rewatched it all again recently.
Oh, cool.
Love that show. Yeah. We'll put your information in the show notes as well. And just thank you so much for chatting with us. It's really exciting, and it seems like you're where you're supposed to be, and that we're going to see a lot more from you. So I'm excited to see what other fun stuff you write for us to entertain the world.
That's so sweet. Thank you so much. This is really fun.
Thank you for listening to Media and Monuments, a service of Women in Film and Video. Please remember to review, rate, and subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast. For more information about WIF, please visit our website at WIF as in Frank, V as in Victor.org. Media and Monuments is produced by Sandra Abrams, Candice Bloch, Brandon Ferry, and Tara Jabari, and edited by Emma Klein and Juliana Yellen, with audio production and mix by Steve Lack, Audio. For more information about our podcast, visit mediaandmonuments.com.